While this campaign is coming to an end, our movement is not. The fight for justice is what our campaign has been about. The fight for justice is what our movement remains about. On a practical note, let me also say this. I will stay on the ballot in all remaining states and continue to gather delegates. While Vice President Biden will be the nominee, we must continue working to assemble as many delegates as possible at the Democratic Convention, where we will be able to exert significant influence over the party platform and other functions. I want to thank the hundreds of thousands of volunteers who knocked on doors, millions of them, in the freezing winters of Iowa and New Hampshire, and in the heat of Nevada and in South Carolina, and in states throughout the country. I want to thank the 2 million Americans who have contributed financially to our campaign and showed the world that we can take on a corrupt campaign finance system and run a major presidential campaign without being dependent upon the wealthy and the powerful. Thank you for your 10 million contributions, averaging $18.50 a donation. I want to thank those who phone banked for our campaign and those of you who sent out millions of texts. And I want to thank the many hundreds of thousands of Americans who attended our rallies, town meetings, and house parties from New York to California. Some of these events had over 25,000 people, some had a few hundred, and some had a dozen, but all were important. And let me thank those who made these many events possible. I also want to thank our surrogates, too many to name. I can't imagine that any candidate has ever been blessed with a stronger and more dedicated group of people who have taken our message to every part of this country. And I want to thank all of those who made the music and the art an integral part of our campaign. I want to thank all of you who spoke to your friends and neighbors, posted on social media, and worked as hard as you could to make this a better country. Together, we have transformed American consciousness as to what kind of nation we can become, and have taken this country a major step forward in the never-ending struggle for economic justice, social justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. I also want to thank the many hundreds of people on our campaign staff. You were willing to move from one state to another and do all the work that had to be done. No job was too big or too small for you. You rolled up your sleeves and you did it. You embodied the words that are at the core of our movement, not me, but us. And I thank each and every one of you for what you've done. As many of you will recall, Nelson Mandela, one of the great freedom fighters in modern world history, famously said, and I quote, "It always seems impossible until it is done," end quote. And what he meant by that is that the greatest obstacle to real social change has everything to do with the power of the corporate and political establishment to limit our vision as to what is possible and what we are entitled to as human beings. If we don't believe that we are entitled to health care as a human right, we will never achieve universal health care. Even before this horrific pandemic we are now experiencing, more and more Americans understood that we must move to a Medicare for all single-payer program. During the primary elections, exit polls showed in state after state, a strong majority of Democratic primary voters supported a single government health insurance program to replace private insurance. That was true even in states where our campaign did not prevail. And let me just say this, in terms of healthcare, this current horrific crisis that we are now in has exposed for all to see how absurd our current employer-based health insurance system is. The current economic downturn we are experiencing has not only led to a massive loss of jobs, but has also resulted in millions of Americans losing their health insurance. While Americans have been told over and over again how wonderful our employer-based private insurance system is, Those claims sound very hollow today as a growing number of unemployed workers struggle with how they can afford to go to the doctor or not go bankrupt with a huge hospital bill. We have always believed that health care must be considered as a human right, not an employee benefit, and we are right. Please also appreciate that not only are we winning the struggle ideologically, we are also winning it generationally. The future of our country rests with young people. And in state after state, whether we won or whether we lost, the Democratic primaries or caucuses, we received a significant majority of the votes, sometimes an overwhelming majority, from people not only 30 years of age or under, but 50 years of age or younger. In other words, the future of this country is with our ideas. As we are all painfully aware, we now face an unprecedented crisis. Not only are we dealing with a coronavirus pandemic, which is taking the lives of many thousands of our people, we are also dealing with an economic meltdown that has resulted in the loss of millions of jobs. Today, families all across our country face financial hardship unimaginable only a few months ago. And because of the unacceptable levels of income and wealth inequality in our economy, many of our friends and neighbors have little or no savings and are desperately trying to pay their rent or their mortgage or even put food on the table. This reality makes it clear to me that Congress must address this unprecedented crisis in an unprecedented way that protects the health and economic well-being of the working families of our country, not just powerful special interests. As a member of the Democratic leadership in the United States Senate, and as a senator from the state of Vermont, this is something that I intend to intensely be involved in over the next number of months, and that will require an enormous amount of work. Which takes me to the state of our presidential campaign. I wish I could give you better news, but I think you know the truth. And that is that we are now some 300 delegates behind Vice President Biden, and the path toward victory is virtually impossible. So while we are winning the ideological battle, and while we are winning the support of so many young people and working people throughout the country, I have concluded that this battle for the Democratic nomination will not be successful. And so today, I am announcing the suspension of my campaign. On a practical note, let me also say this. I will stay on the ballot in all remaining states and continue to gather delegates. We must continue working to assemble as many delegates as possible at the Democratic Convention, where we will be able to exert significant influence over the party platform and other functions. Please stay in this fight with me. Let us go forward together. The struggle continues. Thank you all very much.
When you do vote in the primary, vote for Bernie Sanders. He's honest and he has integrity. Biden has repeatedly lied. Here he doesn't keep his word to meet this woman and her friends and then just takes off after his speech.
I had to wait time to be sworn in.
I got it. Joe Biden does not have a housing plan.
That's right. Let them go. You won't get evicted. You won't get it. You listen. Will you listen for just a second? If you listen, I'll tell you. If you listen, I'll tell you. Under my, just tell her to be quiet just a second. This is not a Trump rally, okay? You have reason to be upset. Will you listen? Will you listen? Would you be willing, the three of you, to talk to me after this is over? Because I'm going to make sure you're not evicted when I'm President of the United States of America. You can't be.
Will you commit to a homes guarantee?
You got a home guarantee, man.
Where?
Look at my plan. You just listen.
I got cancer and I got evicted. That's how they treat you.
Let me ask, hey, whoa. If you be quiet for a second. Will you meet with me after this is over, and I'll explain to you my entire housing plan, and you will be square. I promise you. Take a look at it. Well, look, here's the deal.
It's not enough. I've read your housing plan. It's no good. It doesn't help us.
I'm not sure I can check my
What did you say? You said what? You said he's not going to meet with us after he said he would, and you want us to leave? That's what you said?
I just shut down the Biden rally because we need a homes guarantee. I got evicted after I was diagnosed with cancer for the second time. His homes plan is not adequate, and we need a homes guarantee. He said that he would meet with us. He committed to a meeting, and then he put us out and had his staff deny us that meeting. Biden lies! That ain't right!